I'm going to go grab a water. I'll be a second. Okay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the first episode of The Middle Ground. This podcast, what inspired me to create this podcast was the humanized politicians, the tremendous divide, and people taking this so personally with politics. And I can't even get it. Just frustrates me that much that I thought it would be a great idea to create a podcast to speak with the politicians, understand their position, sort of say, okay, I understand what you mean by that. That's what we're doing here today. I don't like this intro either. I'm probably going to do a better one next time, but this is the podcast that I've kind of wanted to make, and I was very much a sort of inspired to do this by this massive political divide that we're all experiencing in this country. I've always been of the mind, and I'm just to let you know, I'm an unaffiliated voter, meaning I am not Republican, I am not Democrat, I am not, what do they call the other party, independent, I'm not grassroots, I'm not any of that. I'm an American citizen who was watching their countrymen fight each other over things that they shouldn't be fighting. The violence, people actually getting into fist fights, damaging property. This is the most insane time that I've ever lived. There used to be a time 10 years ago when we used to disagree about politics, not my president or whatever else, and still be able to tap a beer in the bar. I'm trying to get back to that, and I'm hoping that this podcast is going to bring us back or hopefully help heal some of that divide. Today we have Chris Poulos. I think I said that right. Chris Poulos. Yeah, I think so. Chris Poulos is a local politician in Southington. He's going to talk a lot about himself. There is something that grabbed my attention on a vote that he did. He voted on a bill that grabbed my attention and really inspired me to say, this is the guy that I want to talk to first. This is the guy that basically is the middle ground. Welcome so much, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Man, oh man, what a difference 15 years or even 10 years has made in our country, in our state politics, in our local politics. What's your thoughts? I mean, I know you have some, it's like, because we talked about this before, like the phrase that I mentioned, we used to be able to disagree and still tap a beer at the bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot. I've only been involved in politics in Southington since 2017 when I ran for town council, and even back at that time, I remember one of the first meetings that we had as a town council. Bill Diedzik was elected at the same time I was.
I remember,
and he said to me, "Hey," after the second meeting or so, he's like, "Hey, Tom Lombardi and I are going to grab a beer at the fireplace after the meeting. Do you want to go?" And I went. And we had a great conversation. We didn't talk about the votes we had just made. We talked about our families.
Yep.
We talked about where we were going on vacation. And then another counselor came the following time, and we would have these follow-ups. It was great. And it was human. You talk about humanizing politics.
Humanizing politics, exactly.
We put kind of the politics aside. And now I'm not saying that those types of interactions don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that they happen quite frequently up at the Capitol. In Hartford, the legislature is not so much with going out and drinking or that, but it's a very civil place. And, I sat my first time in the Capitol right on the line, and I sat next to a colleague from the other party, and we would have great conversations. We'd laugh, and there'd be sometimes a vote would come up, and it'd be an education vote. And I'd say, "Hey, this is really good for kids and teachers." and we'd talk a little bit, and I'd see his hand move to the green button, and he was in banking field, and he'd say, "This bill's really bad for small business, Chris." And I'd listen, and I would trust him. And I think that there's civility and trust up there between all the members of the legislature, and we're very cordial. And but you do see the national news. It's
very divisive,
pretty divisive, and
they say
and
divisive.
you just my hope is I try to listen to people. I try to understand all perspectives, and I think if I kind of model a middle ground in my votes, in my rhetoric, who I talk to, and who I try to help, I hope that example, someone looks at it and says, "Hey, I could do that too."
Yeah,
and so
and that is the very reason why I asked you directly. You were the first person I thought of, because you live in, you're a Democrat. There's no question that's your party.
Yeah,
and
sure.
you vote on your party side on occasion, more than on occasion, but you also consider the other point of view, the other side of things. And I feel like you live very close to the middle, more so than a lot of other Democrats, for example, even on a national level. It seems it's become like almost a small little group. So I wanted to talk a little bit about you. And here's what I wanted to talk about. You grew up in Southington, class president, 93?
93, best year.
Yep. And then you earned a BA in leadership studies. What's leadership studies? I feel like you were training your whole life to be a politician.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I was involved in student government in high school, and I really liked government. And so at the time, back in the 90s, the University of Richmond, where I went to school, had an undergraduate major in leadership studies. It was the only school in the country that offered that degree. And so I was very attracted to it. And basically, I applied, I got in. And basically what you have to do in a leadership major is you have to have a double major or a strong minor. So I actually had a minor in Spanish and a minor in business administration. And then they teach you in that program the contexts of leadership, where it occurs. So it might be the business world, the political world, the nonprofit world, et cetera, education world. And then the competencies, like the skills and dispositions leaders have. And so it was a great program. I did an internship. It was a required internship in Washington, D.C. I worked on Capitol Hill for 12 weeks in the summer, and really got a lot of insight into government and through the lens of leadership. And leadership is not synonymous with politics. Leadership, I view it as circumstantial, and how you function in a circumstance where as either the leader or someone or the follower, just as important, and how you actually get to yes in whatever situation you're in.
And so it's really like you said, it's not so much it's not so much getting into politics, but it's about the leadership, business leadership. And so what inspired you to go to, so you went to the Peace Corps after that. What was that?
Yeah. So
I went to Honduras. Right? It wasn't like you went somewhere easy either.
Well, I learned like after 12 weeks on the Hill, right? I did a lot of answering phone calls, writing letters back to constituents. This was before email. And I said, and I looked around and I said, if I want to get into public service, I actually have to do some public service. And so, I looked out, I could have joined the Army. I could, the military. I thought the Peace Corps was very interesting because I did have that minor in Spanish. And so I applied. It took me a year. I got in. I was assigned to a very rural part of Honduras, Central America, about 4 hours from the capital. In a little village, 40 houses, no electricity. You couldn't drink the water. And I lived across the street from an elementary school. It was a 2-room school. It had 80 kids in it, 2 teachers. And one of my projects centered around working with them. And I would say about halfway through the 27 months I was there, I realized that as much as I had this desire for public service, and I could do it through education, I could as a teacher, because teachers really work in communities and they work with young people, and they serve those communities.
Extremely important.
Yeah. So I came
know
home
a few
and I got
teachers
certified
that inspired me.
Spanish. I taught Spanish because I had just learned it in the Peace Corps, and it was a cool experience, and I wanted to be able to share some of the cool things about my experience in Central America. with kids and maybe try to inspire them to appreciate,
What they
different
have,
culture.
what they have here, the different cultures,
Yeah.
and there's, I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
there's big differences between
I'll,
United States or Western,
oh,
yeah.
mhm.
I mean, even Eastern,
Yeah.
same deal.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Europe in college, and I lived in Central America after college, and I could tell you that I wouldn't trade living where I live for any of those places. They're great, but we really have a great
We do.
United States.
We
Yeah.
do, and it is something that I think we should cherish more than I think that a lot of us may be taking this for granted. So
Well,
when
yeah,
you were in
it's not perfect.
Honduras, one,
Yeah, it's not perfect.
it's not perfect, but
Yeah,
it's much better than most.
there's
So
work
let me
to do.
ask you, like in Honduras, what is the one story that stuck out in your mind that you always will remember?
Well, I tell this story all the time, but I was back to the school. The kids in rural Honduras typically go to sixth grade. And once they hit sixth grade, the boys typically start to work in the fields with their fathers, and the girls will work with their mothers. Unless you have money, unless you own a huge farm, you have a sixth grade education. And that's not in the cities, but in the rural part of the country where I was. And there was a sixth grader. His name was Ronald. And we were the sixth graders do a project. And we were putting together a tree nursery to reforest the watershed. Because of the farming techniques that they have down there, they cut down a lot of their forests, and then the soil erodes, and it wrecks the water source, and it's just problematic environmentally. So, but the young kids get it. They get that there's environmental issues down there. So we were building a tree nursery, and it was kind of the gift of the sixth graders as they moved on. And so I was kind of assigned to work with them, and I was kind of walking around. It was in the beginning. I had a machete, and I'd go to cut one of the posts for the lean-to that we were planting these trees under, and I was just hacking at the branch, and this kid Ronald came up to me, and he showed me how to do it with three quick strikes of the machete, and so he kind of taught me, how to do my job while I was helping him, and so he led this big project, and it was the day of the inauguration, and we were going to plant a tree. That was the school ceremony. We had 1,000 trees or so that we had gotten to little saplings, and they were going to just plant one and say, we did it. And when I got to the school that day, I was across the street from my house. I couldn't find the kid. I was looking around. I asked the teachers. They didn't know. And finally, I caught up with his brother. And his brother says, well, he can't come to school today. He's got to go work with my father. And I felt bad. And I ran down to his house. Everything's pretty close, and the mother was there, and he was still there. And I begged her. I said, "Can you please send him?" And I'm trying to rationalize her sending her kid to school to plant a tree at the schoolyard, and she's telling me about how he needs to go work to get crops and food to sustain their family of 10. But she trusted me, and she let him come with me, and we went back, and he led that ceremony. And I often say that was the moment where I decided, and I kind of confirmed that I wanted to be a teacher, because I had made an impact on that little kid. Whether how big it was for him, it was symbolic for me. And so that's the story I talk about, like kind of that moment where I decided I wanted to be a teacher.
That's incredible. And that's the thing is I think we take this for granted, because we'll go to, no matter what, we have to go to school till high school, till 12th grade, no matter what. Even though a lot of us were like in 11th, 10th, 11th going, but that's an incredible story. And I'm wondering where and what's going on with Ronald today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. He's probably got 10 kids of his own.
And a farm.
Yeah.
And a farm. Yeah. Speaking of coming back as being a teacher, 25 years as a teacher. Yep. Teaching Spanish, am I not mistaken?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
State Teacher of the Year in 2007.
That's right.
Instructional Leader for the Humanities Department. You're going to tell me a little bit about that. Yeah. National Teachers Hall of Fame in 2022. Does that make sense?
That's all accurate. Yeah.
Dude, that is amazing. And maintains dual roles, continuing to teach while still serving as a legislator.
Yeah.
You were telling me a little bit earlier about how difficult that can be sometimes, because you're in school and they got to run up to the state, take care of business there. So, all right. So let's start with serving as an instructional leader for humanities. What is the humanities department?
So it's just a way our school is arranged. We have the principal, and then the assistant principals. And then we have these giant departments: humanities, which are English, the arts, world language, social studies. And then we have a STEM department: math, science. And then we have a health and wellness department, which the counseling department and then the health teachers and physical fitness teachers fall under. So in those big departments, there's teachers that get a one class release to kind of organize teachers within those giant departments. So I work regularly with the world language teachers in exchange for like a one class remission.
That's
Works
awesome,
out about the same amount of work. But,
so I had no idea what it was. It's been so long.
Yeah.
I remember I took Spanish class, hated every minute of it. Guess what I didn't learn?
Spanish.
Yeah. Now I'm using artificial intelligence to change my language. Yeah, you saw that. I know you did. Yeah, that was awesome. So you were all right. So now we're going to get into here we go, into the political stuff. Yeah. 2017 elected a town council. Here's what I got on my notes: known for bipartisan collaboration, which is why I wanted you on the show in the first place.
Yeah.
Tell me how your years as a town council went.
Oh, I mean, we on the town council, I do believe so much of politics is listening to the people you represent. And so one of my things that I do all the time is I go out and I knock on a lot of doors. Even during my town council time, I would knock on doors and I talk to people.
Yeah, you did that with me.
Yeah,
it was literally. I mean, I've met you before, but that was the first time you came into the house and we had a good conversation. Yeah. That was the day that you changed my vote for straight Republican ticket to voting for you. That was the day.
I appreciate that, Glenn. I thank you for your support. So I think that when you're operating that way, we all have our own opinions. But we also have to represent other opinions. And so when you're operating that way, you kind of devise where you stand on issues. And sometimes you're in support. In Southington, I've always been very pro public safety. And so there were some times where the other party would make a proposal about the police, and I would support it. And I think that, again, demonstrating that it's okay to agree with someone on the other side at times is worthwhile. At the same time, and not in that particular situation, there's times where you're in a conversation and you agree with someone, and then you might say, hey, well, that I can't get that far because maybe their point of view is a little bit too far for, where you stand on the issue. And so that's where compromise and negotiation come into play. And so if it means compromise to get a good idea across the finish line, and compromise means you have to give up something. You have to be okay with giving something up. But, I always think that, are they okay with what they're giving up? If you can get there, I think that's really ideal. And I think a lot of the stuff, the legislature is so full of compromise. You don't see it on TV. You see silly things on TV, like the banning of gas-powered leaf blowers, which I just think is ridiculous.
Wait, so clear the air. Is that not true or not? Because I thought that was crazy too. I was thinking there must be some other thing.
Someone introduced that bill, but that's not going to go anywhere. And heck, if it comes to me, I'll hit that red button so fast, I don't think it's ever going to get a vote. But you can introduce anything. I mean, I could introduce that I want the banana to be the fruit of Southington, and they'd print it and the media would probably pick it up, so but what happens is the news picks up these things that seem kind of dramatic.
Yep.
And then they put them out there and people get emotional, but I don't see that ever making it to a vote in the chamber, that bill.
I'm so happy that you said that publicly, because it was so wild.
I would be a no on that one. Yeah.
I have to think a lot would be a no on that one.
Glenn, and we don't have to talk about leaf blowers, but for me, that's like a local thing. And one of the things I stand for is if a town wants to do that, they can do that. If say it's the sound, the local people who make that ordinance are going to have to answer for it. But the state of Connecticut has no business telling every single town in the state what they have to do with their leaf blowers. And that's just my view on that.
So I can't imagine a town ever doing that either, though.
No.
That's the big wild. I mean, maybe they got muff. I mean, a time limit maybe after 8 a.m. would make sense. You know, that makes sense.
Anyways,
so you after the town council, like, and this is wild. Advocated for local projects, preserving open space. Yep, I remember that. You're supporting first responders. We talk about that, and small businesses, which I have noticed personally. And you're recognized, but you're also when did the library board of directors come in? 21.
Yeah, so I got off the council in November 21.
Yep.
I was asked to if I would be interested in an appointment to the library board. To me, I was, thinking about a break, but I thought that was an important position because I really wanted to understand. I knew we were about to start a building project, and I wanted to understand what was that was going to entail. And so I joined the library board, and, it wasn't the library building committee who oversaw the building of the library, but we did have many discussions as the library board about how we envisioned the space and what we thought the library of the future would look like. And so
that was my fault. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I just wanted to, kind of be at the table when they discussed the use, what this future library of Southington was gonna look like. So I did that, but within a year I was elected to the state legislature. So I did resign my position because I wanted to dedicate.
Oh, I was going to ask if you're still.
Yeah.
But so on paper that library looked pretty terrible. But in physical form, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
I thought it came out really nice. I know there was a little shortage on the funds to get it finished the right way or get it. And of course, this all happened. Inflation came in and changes everything, and it's hard because people don't quite understand how that works. They had a certain amount of money, and now that money is sort of the dollar's weakened, so they could buy a lot less, and it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but I mean, I think that it came out nice.
It came out nice. I'll say this, that Mark showed, I saw that exactly what you just said. I saw the library design crumbling at the seams. It was getting reduced in size. The exterior aesthetic was being changed.
Yep.
And Mark Shota came to me. I got elected in November. I got sworn in January. By end of January, we were talking on the phone, and he said, we could really use $3 million, Chris. Is there any way? And I said, look, I'm new up here, but I'll try. And I put in for 5. And I thought about when I was a kid, I'd ask my dad for $20 and he'd give me 10.
Yep.
I was like, I'm going to ask for more. And we had the bonding chair come up. We had several meetings, and we were lucky to get all $5 million. So we were able to restore a lot of the space in that project. And at the same time, I went to the library board, to the library building committee, to the town council, and I said, we have to do something about the exterior aesthetic. We have to have overhangs. We have to trim the windows out. We want this building. It's going to be there for 100 years at least.
Yeah, at least 100 years.
And Paul Champagne, who was serving on that committee, he made a motion. He's like, let's form a little subcommittee for the exterior look. And they did, and they did what they could do with, the steel had already been ordered for a lot. So the general shape was what it was. But I think at the end of the day, it came out. I love the inside, and I'm good with the outside. I think once the parking lot on the north side is done, that corner is all landscaped.
Yep.
It's going to sit nicely on that parcel.
I think it's going to be. It's just everything from top to. The only thing I didn't do yet is bring my kids, and they keep asking. I always keep forgetting. Yeah. They always remind me on the Sunday when the library's closed.
Yeah,
typical kids.
Yeah.
So, I hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
So, when you ran, I just want to get this clear because you just ran.
Yep.
Recently in the last year or so, but in 22, you barely won.
Yeah.
It
was a close election.
That close. It was by one vote, 52-97 to 52-96.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. I went out. I had an awesome team. I worked hard. That was a really solid Republican seat. And I said, I'm gonna just get out and share my message and my vision and who I am. And again, I think that campaign I knocked on 53 or 5,400 doors, but I had some great conversations, kind of like the one we just had. And I think people listened. And, I always call myself an independent thinker. And when people ask me what that means, I typically go to my record and we talk about the record, some tough votes I've made and why. And I think people really respect that. And they see that, I try to keep myself above the political fray. And I out of all the people I've talked to, over 10,000, tens of thousands of people, I would say the majority of people really just want people to get along, be productive, and move the community forward. I liken it to, and I mentioned I worked in Washington, D.C. And at that time, Bill Clinton was running in 1996 for president against Bob Dole. Okay.
Senate I remember. Oh, yeah. I remember Bob Dole.
You couldn't have two opposite people in terms of personal life and political philosophy.
Yeah, for sure.
But those two people, they sat down and they were the last two leaders to balance the federal budget. They put their stuff aside, their differences of opinions. They sat down. Newt Gingrich was involved as well.
Yep.
And they balanced the federal budget. Man,
you were bringing us some serious history lessons here.
Well, that's what people want, by the way. I mean, people want a friendly and let's just kind of put away all noise. And so I would talk about that story, and I would tell how, I would like to think I've replicated that a little bit in my various different roles, and not to that great extent, but that's my hope, and that's kind of like my driving force.
Yep, and I agree with you 100% on that you are exactly that, and you are achieving that goal. And now we're going to talk about the one bill that you voted on recently, which grabbed my attention and justified my vote for the one Democrat during that year. And that we're
going to make it two Democrats next election. Okay.
We'll see. Calm down.
Right,
Calm down.
Okay.
So tell me about the bill. Tell me how you voted and tell me the reason why.
Okay.
This is the biggie. This is the big one.
So, I mean, I got to tell you, there are lots and lots of tough, challenging votes that you make. And I have to tell you, this is a theme of this podcast. On this last election, I talked to over 8,000 people, 8,000 houses. Okay. And so it was actually an amendment for a bill that came up, and it was about the transgender sports, which we've been hearing about in the news. Now, let me just say, first and foremost, okay, I support the LGBTQ community. I support that community. On that particular issue of transgender sports, I do think that it's physiologically unfair. I was asked about that during my campaign. I was asked when I was at the Chamber of Commerce Forum what I thought, and I was honest. And I told the story of my two kids. Now, I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. They both do the same sport. They're competitive skiers, and they typically ski in different competitions because of their age difference. But recently, they skied the same course on the same day at Ski Sundown. And they have the same coaches, I'll say that. And in a sport like skiing, it's not very different than swimming or running. A win can be, a placement could be between 100th of a second could be the determinant. And my son, who is taller than my daughter, even though he's 4 years younger, he probably weighs the same, beat her by 15 seconds. Same course, same conditions, same training. And I could only imagine if he was 18 too, if he were through puberty on that course. And so I just don't physiologically think that it's fair. Now, that's my personal story, and I have that. But I also, when I went to those 8,000 doors, I talked to many people from the LGBTQ community. I asked them, we had honest conversations. I said, what do you think about the sports? And the majority of people said to me that they didn't think it was physiologically fair. And so when that vote came before me, I remained consistent, and I thought about my constituents, and I thought about my personal experience, and that's why I went forward the vote I did. And like I said, you could look at my record. In other votes, I've supported the LGBTQ community.
Yep.
But on this issue, it was inconsistent with what I thought was fair.
I agree with you. And I think that, to your point, a majority of people would agree with you. I don't think that saying this is saying, anybody from the LGBTQT community should be banished or shoved aside, because if there's anything that I've done in my entire life was to say, as an American, you are free to do what you would like to do without anybody getting in your face about it. Mm-hmm. And that includes, being transgender, being homosexual, and also disagreeing with those lifestyles as well, but in a sort of a respectful way, nonviolent way. And I think the majority of the people that live in this country believe that and have that moral compass. And sometimes I say to myself, I don't know anybody in my head I've known for my 50 years in life that has ever done anything to denigrate a homosexual, LGBTQ, or any part of that community ever. I can't remember. Not to say it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that there's probably a minority of people who do. Mm-hmm. But I want to applaud you for being brave and doing that, because I know that it was difficult with your fellow Democrats, and I'm sure that some things have happened where they sort of gave you a lot of crap. Does that make sense? Would that be fair?
No, Glenn, I would say like the Democratic Party in Connecticut, in Southington, I think is a big tent party. And the members of the Democratic Party know we have moderate leaning people in there like me, and there's more progressive leaning people and everything in between. And, what I appreciate about the legislature is there's a respect for differences of opinions. And so again, and I give that respect too. When someone puts forth someone that I disagree with, I don't call them a name. Like, we get along. And so, and in Southington, if we come back to Southington, I think I've been clear and consistent on where I stand on issues ranging from everything from labor to police to this vote. The Southington Democratic Town Committee has always supported me, and unanimously.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, unanimously nominating me for re-election, and the contributions I get when I'm qualifying for state financing come mostly from Democratic Town Committee people. And again, we need to foster civil discourse and
discussion,
conversation and discussion.
Have the conversation. That's it. It's really all we have to do. It's just it's sort of step out of your own shoes, see it from the other point of view, and try to understand. Yeah. Not saying you have to understand. Try to understand.
It's like a family, right? Like think about
it really is. Your family. Like Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, exactly. We have so many different views, but I'm not going to over a political topic like hate on my mother or my brother or my aunt. We're going to say, okay, well, we disagree, and we remain civil, because
and that's it.
Yeah.
So why do you think that the perception is a this or that? I hate, we disagree, so we're enemies. Why is that perception so prevalent now? Is it the media to blame? Is it the people to blame? Is it social media? Why do you think that this is happening in the perception? Because what you're telling me from my perception is so much different. Like, and you're kind of surprising me saying things like, we get along up there. We work together. We do have discussions, but when it comes to the media, it's a totally different perception.
I have to say, I think the one, if I had to guess, I don't have any data. I think social media has divided us. And I think, it's easier to type something than to say something in someone's face.
Right.
So I think people kind of don't hold back as much. They don't filter as much. And I think that has been a major contributor to the divisions we face.
Yeah,
But
you're right about that.
Think about it, Glenn. All right. And here's how I combat that. And I keep saying this number. I went to 8,000 houses and actually talked to people like you.
Yep.
And people saw me for who I was. They didn't say, "Oh, here comes the
label Democrat." Yep.
Yeah, the crazy Democrat, like, based on what they might see the meme or something like that.
Right.
They say, I actually had a meaningful conversation with them. And so I do think we have to they're talking about now about phones in schools and how that should be regulated, because they want kids to have these meaningful conversations. And so I choose to operate, I do a ton of outreach. So, tomorrow I'll be at Spring Lake Village. Next week I'll be with veterans at the Calendar House. I have an event at the library. I try to get out and talk to as many people. And I don't really, I've made it an effort not to have a presentation, but I say, please ask me your questions. What are you hearing? What information can I give you? And
let's have a conversation.
Yeah. And if I don't know the answer, or I haven't done the research to have an opinion, I say, let me get back to you. And so I do think that human interaction is the key to
maybe healing this divide.
Yeah, to closing the gap we've created.
A massive gap too. And I'm hoping that this podcast is a step in that direction. Oh, I would love that, because I think that the rhetoric, like you said, going back and forth, this constant tit for tat thing is just so frustrating, because nothing ever gets done. Or it does get done, but it just takes so long because we got to get past all the crap first.
I mean, the national news channels too, I think, contribute.
Oh my God.
Social media,
it's so bad. I stopped watching altogether.
Yeah, it's great. My mother, who's 80, God bless her, she calls me. Everybody thinks I have the answers. I say, Mom, do me a favor. I'm worried about your well-being. Can you stop?
Please.
So she stopped watching the news. And it's great. She's like, well, I do watch Lester Holt, and so he's okay. 30 minutes, you get a little fix, but that's it. Turn it off after Lester, So.
Yeah. It's just, and then you have the other things, just like social media, TikTok, and everything else, which is you never it's a hit or miss on accurate information with that. That's another thing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to some more stuff. You are on some committees here: education, public safety, security, veterans, military affairs, vice chair of the special education committee. My God, bro!
Yeah.
How many things can you fit into your life?
Look, most people have 3 committees. They asked me if I would if I'd be the vice chair of the special ed committee, and just look, I'm in my classroom right now, having an understanding of how schools work. And I have a good relationship with Superintendent Dancy. I consulted with him. I introduced legislation that was guided by his insight in terms of some of the funding challenges for the special education program in Southington, but across the state. And so, if there's going to be legislation that's aimed to improve, and there's no silver bullet, nothing's going to erase all of our challenges. If someone tells you that they're going to erase all of your challenges, lock your door and run and hide. But what we can do is we can put systems in place to try to improve the current conditions. And so I'm proud to work on that special education committee. I've learned a ton. Mm-hmm. I really want it to be fairly balanced between rural, suburban, and urban, right? Forget about political parties. Can we balance this thing out between the different types of communities we have? Because an urban community has different needs than Southington or Litchfield, so, and I think we're going to make some good progress there. It has been a truly collaborative committee. Everybody's sitting down and trying to figure it out. So
I love that you have the time for this.
Yeah.
And I love the work that you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I think it's important. So, like I said earlier, I said I was going to skip because we're getting pretty close here, and I wanted to give you sort of an opportunity to say whatever it is you like to say. So first, I wanted you to talk. You said you have some events coming up, and you want to hit us with some dates, times, and places.
Sure. Yeah. So some of the events that I have coming up are for members of certain organizations, and so a gentleman from Spring Lake Village asked me to go speak in their community center. So that's for the residents of Spring Lake Village and maybe their guests. And that's tomorrow. On April 11th at 9:30 in the morning, I'll be having my 3rd annual coffee hour at the Calendar House.
Am I coming?
What's that?
Can I come?
Yeah, you can come.
Awesome.
I mean, it's a
veterans
coffee hour, but you come as my guest if you're not. I don't know if you're a vet or not, but
no, I'm not.
Come as my guest if you want to come. And we've done this three years now. So I will come with the Commissioner of Veterans and Military Affairs, and we will make. I'll talk a little bit about some of the legislation. I'm really proud. One of the bills I put in that's slowly moving forward is to secure funds to fix our Veterans Memorial on the town green. There's all kinds of names missing and misspellings on there. So I'll report out to the community on that. We've had some updates on some of the benefits for our 100% disabled veterans, and there's always questions about that. So I'll be able to add clarification on the legislation. The commissioner is there, and he usually comes with someone from his team to let our vets know what services that are currently in place in the state of Connecticut for them. So a lot of people might need hearing aids. And so they right there and then they have the staff to say, you can go to this VA hospital and you have this benefit and here's the paperwork you need to fill out. So it's
what the news can do? I think they could do a better job of reporting that stuff rather than the other stuff, because they spend so much time. Because just to your point, you wouldn't even have to have these things because a lot of veterans don't even know these services exist. And I think it's super important that you're doing that.
The turnouts like that, there's always about 70 or 80 vets at these coffee hours. The turnout's great. So I'm looking forward to that. We have the Lions Club asked me to go speak with them. I'll say this: if any organization listening wants to invite me in to talk to their members, I'm very happy to come. They might have specific questions to their needs. And then the big one is April 15th, 6:30 p.m. at the library. In the new library, you can bring your kids, Glenn.
Sounds good.
In the community room, we'll be doing, and I'll be putting that out on my socials and on my newsletter, the formal announcement for that. But I just secured the space, and so that one's open to the whole public. And so, but we've had great success going to the different coffee houses in town, and if people are coming in and they have a question, great, and I'm there to answer it. But sometimes it brings people into our small businesses, and so I'm always glad to help kind of give back.
You're a very big supporter of small business. It's another one of your accolades on my notes here that you are a big proponent.
But after this, April 15th, things are going to get pretty crazy in Hartford. We're going to be up there almost every day, late into the night. So I try to do all my outreach before I have to go and make the votes. So I've heard from people when I'm up there, I often will think back to a conversation and say, does this make sense? And so,
if you're listening, go see him before he has to go up there, because after that, don't call him. Yeah. It's just going to be too late. He's got, so April, you're still in school. But probably not that time. It's probably hard to get in touch with you because you're going to be teaching then in Hartford all night long, back home, get maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep, back to teaching. Does that sound like the schedule you're about to run into?
I have an awesome support mechanism with my work and with my family. So, it's always been manageable because of those support mechanisms.
That's awesome. Shout out to the fam and mom for jumping in.
Yeah.
So, all right. So websites, socials. Tell me which websites we're running where you can find some of this information in your socials.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, you catch me off guard on that one.
That's okay. If you want, I can put it in the description later.
No, State Rep Chris Poulos is my Facebook handle. That's a lot of people confuse it with Poulos for Southington.
Yes, I did say
campaign. It's my campaign page.
Okay.
And then let me see. Give me a second here.
I did find your page on the ct.gov, right? It's just CT.legislators, but don't sweat it too much, man. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember URLs that well, but
Well, here's the deal. I tell you what, I searched Chris Poulos, and because you have such a unique last name, it was very easy to find your stuff. So search Chris Poulos in Google search. You will find everything you could possibly need, including his schedule, which I'm sure it'll be on his Facebook page and his website. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you bet. And I, what was I going to say? Yeah, on my Facebook page, as I just mentioned, all my websites are there, so you can.
That's what I was saying. Like I said, you're super easy to find. Just Chris Poulos. Google search your Poulos. Right?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Yeah. For a second, I was like, "Did I mess it up?" Because you had that look in your face, like I messed it up. Thank you.
No, I was actually looking up the stuff on a different web page, but sorry to be distracted.
No worries. Dude, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. We have tremendous value in this podcast, and I think that this is the very first step in a long road of trying to heal our country, trying to bring us together, even though we have differences of opinion. To your point and what you said, it's like we are family, and we don't have to hate each other. We can disagree without the hate. I think that's. I
appreciate what you're doing, Glenn, and I'm honored to be the first inaugural guest on your inaugural podcast. So
I appreciate that.
Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, of course, man. We're going to go and we're going to tap a beer at some point soon.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah,
Chris, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
So that was it. The very first episode of Middle Ground Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with that. I've done so many podcasts before, but they were always on business. This is my first time stepping into the political arena. I was nervous, and not going to lie, a little scared because I wasn't sure how I was going to be taken, and I still kind of don't. We'll see as this podcast progresses. I want to thank Chris for taking time out of his enormously busy schedule to sit and talk with myself, you guys, speak who he is. And again, this is the middle ground. I'll see you guys in the middle.